Welcome to the Demidchik Law Firm YouTube channel.
Hello, this is Anna Demidchik, Demidchik Law Firm, and with me today is my colleague Robert Hazzard. In his legal career, Robert worked on both criminal defense and civil litigation matters. And when it comes to civil litigation domain, Robert had a chance to practice both large corporate matters, including regulatory compliance, as well as, of course, disputes between private parties. And in those disputes between private parties, there is one issue, an easily avoidable one, that makes resolving these disputes significantly more difficult than it should be. Let's take a look. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Anna. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
All right. So in the introduction to our conversation today, I told the listeners that we're going to be discussing an issue that makes resolving civil disputes a lot more complicated than it really should be. So tell us, what's the issue?
Yeah, so one of the most common issues that we see amongst mainly our Chinese clients, which is predominantly, our main clients, is that they either seek to enforce an oral agreement as a plaintiff, or even on the defense side, when they're seeking to enforce what they're entitled to under an oral agreement. It's very difficult to enforce that in court because all of the main terms that we need in a contract, are a question of fact. It's a he-she situation, whereas if we had it in writing, it's much easier to prove. How long is the contract for? What is the scope of the contract? What is the duration of the contract, or those actual services that are being contracted for? And what are the obligations of each side? And obviously, those main points are always the things that are disputed, along with the payment, obviously. So, if we always have one party that says, I did everything I was supposed to under our agreement, and they just didn't pay me, and then we have a situation where the other side will say, well, we didn't pay you because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. And then we have nothing to go to court with. It's basically, one word against the other. So, we try to stress to the clients, because obviously it's a learning experience for them. They're not used to litigation, most of them. The ones that are, put it in writing so they don't have that issue. But, we still handle the case. It just makes it a lot more difficult, and then we advise the client in the future what really needs to be done. The payments are also an issue, because a lot of the times the payments are done in cash. When the payments are done in cash, we can't even prove whether a payment was made, how much of the payment was made. So it's also another he said, she said. In fact, a lot of times, even if it is cash, it doesn't even come out of the bank. It comes from, cash that the people save at either their home or their place of business, because they operate cash businesses. And, I think a lot of that comes from the fact that, we deal with a lot of immigrants. Obviously, immigration is a huge part of our business. People migrate here from mainland China, and when they come here, like every other culture, they bring their own traditions with them. And, this goes back to these people. I'm not talking about people that live in major cities like Beijing. They're a little bit more acclimated as to things. But the people that are from the small regions, they don't have these issues that they have over here, because if they make an agreement with somebody in their village or in their town, and that person doesn't come through on the agreement, whether they're, the one that's supposed to be paying or the one that's supposed to be doing the work, that gets spread amongst the community, and then they're ostracized from the community. So they don't need lawyers like over here.
Right.
They'll basically, nobody will ever do business with them, unless they resolve it, the right way. So they carry those traditions over here, and the cash is also, a tradition. I mean, obviously it's a communist government. So, people are afraid to put cash in the bank. People want cash on hand in case, anything happens. And that tradition, follows over here. So, I think it's part of our obligation as attorneys, not only to represent them, in the legal sense, but also to counsel them, to avoid these issues, in the future.
I agree. As far as writing goes, what kind of writing would be sufficient? Does it have to be a very formal contract? Or can something less formal be enough for court?
Well, something less formal is obviously we would prefer a contract written by an attorney. Obviously, if we write the contract, we know it's going to be a solid contract. But as long as it's in writing and it has the date of execution, it has the parties' names, it has what we call the material terms, which is basically the obligations of what each party, is agreeing to do for the other party, what the payment amount is going to be and when that payment's going to be made, and it's a signed document, then we at least have the ability to enforce it, whether or not it's in English or Mandarin, because again, we have a lot of clients that, only speak Mandarin, that can't write in English. They only write, in traditional Chinese. But we could still use that because we could get that certified by an interpreter and get that into court and use a translator. And that works, obviously a lot better than one person saying, I said this, and the other person saying, I said that. And then it's basically up to a jury or a judge to decide who they believe. It becomes a credibility issue rather than, an evidence issue, something that we could prove with documentary evidence.
What if it's a WeChat conversation?
So the WeChat conversations are interesting. Okay, as long as the WeChat conversations are still accessible on that person's phone, we have the ability to have that person testify as to that being their account. This is their phone, produce phone records that's obviously their phone. And again, even if it's in Chinese, we can get it in through an interpreter. The problem with WeChat is if it's not in the phone anymore, because what happens is with WeChat, and I've only learned this through doing trials, is that if the person switches phones, even if they maintain the same number and the same WeChat account, those messages from the old phone don't carry over to the new one for some strange reason. And then you have an issue where if you attempt to subpoena the records, it's unlike subpoenaing a text message or something from Apple or for, an Android provider, because WeChat's located in China and China will not listen to our subpoenas, so we don't have the ability to get those records.
So it's a very practical issue that I'm sure a lot of people don't know about.
Yes. And also back to what I was saying before about with the cash, that also comes up we also handle a lot of cases to do with asset forfeiture, whether it's based on a criminal investigation or a client is stopped and they have a bag of cash in the car and it gets seized. And right away they come into our office and they say, we want to get our money back. It's our money. And we don't know why they took it from us. And, the problem with that is if I can't trace where the money came from, it's going to be a problem, because in order for us to succeed on an asset forfeiture claim, we need to be able to show that the money is not from ill-gotten gain. It's not from criminal activity, which means taxes were paid on it. It came out of an account, or it was a loan, or whatever it is. And if we don't have that documentation to back it up, we're not going to win on those forfeiture cases.
Exactly. Money has to be traceable. And people often avoid making money traceable. But if there is an issue, it comes back to bite them.
Exactly. So it may benefit you temporarily from a tax standpoint, if that's the reason why you're riding around with a bag of money, because you don't want to deposit it, you don't want to pay the taxes on it. But if anything happens, you're going to lose a lot more than if you had just paid the taxes on it and claimed it.
True. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Robert.
You're very welcome, Anna. Take care.
Take care.